So how do we cultivate a resilient and responsive distributed design community? From August to October, Fab Lab Barcelona is hosting a weekly online chat series where guests share their personal experiences of responding to moments of crisis. The aim is to collaboratively work on shared vision, aligned values, and develop best practices. This is Resilient Maker Stories. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jean-Luc Perit. This is actually part of the Reservist project, and that's through coordination with the Distributed Design Platform and Fab Lab Barcelona. Of course, for distributed design is one outcome of the intersection of two global trends, the maker movement and the digitization of design discipline. Excuse me one second. Sure. Okay. And so also coming out of the Distributed Design Platform is the book Viral Design, which is named after the paper from our guest speaker today. So really happy to hear his feedback about using the quote here. It says that all situations that occur on a global scale that are not met with the effective responses in the industrial production system could be approached from the way we have seen distributed mobilization in the COVID-19 crisis. They could be the next testing ground for a synchronized international response from a global network. So the Reservist project itself, the aim of it is to repurpose manufacturing lines for providing medical and other products and services in case of spiking demand times. The approach is to set up so-called reservist cells that in times of crisis can be activated within 48 hours to switch to produce the necessary products and services. So building out upon the impact of maker networks, but then also bridging between grassroots makers and manufacturers as well. And so this is part of the Master in Design for Emergent Futures research residency. Of course, I'm Jean-Luc Perit. I'm a graduate of the MDEF program at the Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia at ISABA, and happy to continue the work to this day. Also coming out of the MDEF program is the Atlas of Weak Signals. And so relevant to the Reservist project, we've actually customized the Atlas of Weak Signals, which is used to do future scouting in the MDEF program. But in this context, what we're doing is we have a set of 5 emergency crisis scenarios, and you see them illustrated here: natural disasters, pandemics, man-made disasters, war and terrorism, digital blackouts. How do we first start by kind of like bringing in people's lived experiences, and through the act of storytelling, have them help to map out what the interventions are, how to scale the impact, what are things that are challenges or unexpected, and then how do we go forward from here? And so that brings us again to today's speaker, Enrico Bassi. And I'm just going to pull up my notes here. Enrico graduated in Design and Engineering and Product Design at the Polytechnic University of Milan, coordinated the first Italian Fab Lab digital manufacturing laboratory in 2011, Fab Lab Italia. Subsequently, he was president and coordinator of Fab Lab Torino, the public lab of Officina Arduino. In 2015, he completed Fab Academy. In 2016, he became an instructor and global reviewer for the new edition of Fab Academy, held at Open.Fab Lab, which he has coordinated since 2014. For Open.Dot, he also supervises European and international projects and on the topic of open source health solutions and the circular economy. He has taught and continues to teach digital manufacturing and design engineering at various universities and academies, including LABA, Free Academy of Arts, Brescia, NABA, New Academy of Fine Arts, Milan, Domus Academy, Milan, and the Master of Advanced Studies in Interaction Design at PSI Lugano. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and bring Enrico into the conversation. Enrico, thank you so much for today.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, yes. So I've gone through probably only the tip of the iceberg of all of what you've done. So I definitely want to give you a few minutes to kind of like help unpack, talk a little bit more about your background. Start bringing in your story.
Well, as you were saying before, I started as an industrial designer and product designer. I still do that sometimes, mainly for fun or if there's a project I really believe in. But while I was working as an industrial designer, I realized what's the limitation of the industrial production. And industrial production, it's an amazing, complex machine that works perfectly when things go well. So if there's no drop in cells, or if there's no emergency to face, and you always produce more or less the same amount of pieces, and the pieces are all the same, then it's perfect. It works very well, and it's actually, in average, pretty efficient. It's also fascinating the level of complexity that we managed to reach there. But there was a part missing, and the part missing is the people. So in industrial production, and in so many cases, speaking about policies, speaking about education, people are just like the final user, someone that needs to absorb what the other did, needs to buy, needs to consume, needs to learn, needs to do, needs to change, behave. They never have an active role in the process. So when I discovered the Fab Lab, that was like an epiphany. I mean, it's the way things should be done. Every time you make something, you learn something. And every time you are proactive in a process, you understand the complexity and the implications of what you're doing. So to me, it was a way, let's say, to complete the industrial production. I don't believe that we will, in the near future, stop the industrial production because of the amount of products and the complexity of the products that we use. But for sure, in the industrial production, the industrial production needs buyers, consumers, while in our world, in the Fab Labs, we need users, we need makers, we need proactive people that actually can contribute to the change somehow. So because of that, I decided to switch to digital fabrication and Fab Labs. We started in 2011 with a Fab Lab that was very small, like 25 meters square, inside an exhibition. But it was the first one in Italy, so it was great to explain things to people and show them that there was something new. The second one was strongly community-based, and it was very interesting because of that as well. It's still active, you know, the Fab Lab in Turin. It's actually doing great things with the community. And then when I moved to Open Dot, we took a bit more a design approach. We're trying to scale up the kind of project that we could do. This is another big topic in my mind. I mean, how we need to scale up things. Industrial production, again, scale up things because they are cheap and easy to ship around and sell. And there is an entire system to support that. Digital fabrication don't have yet something like that, right? We have labs, but there's no coordinated cooperation system in place. We have technologies, but we don't have ways to certify or validate what we produce with those technologies, in particular if it's produced distributed around the world. So we tried to work on that level of complexity, and that's when we started with larger international corporations and European projects, mainly on two topics. So in Open Dot, we say that we mainly focus on four things. These four things are health and care. So how can we involve people that have a specific need in being part of their own solution, bringing their own experience? Then circular economy and sustainability, in particular with food, but not only. Because that's something that everybody can contribute to. Then local manufacturing and distributed production, so what we're talking about right now, and education as a sort of support layer that's help people to get into these topics. So we did a pretty big project on health and care, and we realized that out there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of solutions that can be produced digitally, designed by makers, engineers, designers, but also users, doctors, therapists, and so on. We mapped them, we developed some co-design tools specifically for that. And then we started together with the Fab Lab Camp Lindford, and in particular Adriana Cabrera, the Fab Care group. So Fab Care is an international group that wants to support every Fab Lab interested in doing this kind of activities with our experience on the field, but also the tools that we developed, and everything is shared online for free. That's what we are pushing right now to help people to do things. And the other topic again was circular economy and how to basically support the global transitions towards something, a lifestyle that is more sustainable than what we have right now.
It's very it's an integrated, holistic approach that you're taking. It's really important to note that. I wanted to, for the folks that are joining us, that are watching the live stream, I wanted to go back. I open every session with your quote from Viral Design, but I wanted to kind of like also help for people to like, if we can help them define like what you mean by viral design specifically, just so that we know, for this series, that people know that concept.
So, well, during the pandemic, we noticed in the lab that the maker response had similarities to the pandemic itself. So the pandemic started in big cities and spread to big cities because those were the most interconnected areas on the globe. The same way interconnected people around the world were working together to create solutions. So the virus was mutating, and it's still mutating nowadays. And the design was evolving, adapting to the local context, improving, and also somehow being evaluated and selected through evolutionary process. So 10 different face shields were produced or designed, and then you tested them out and you figure out that one works better than the other. It's faster, easier, more reliable, more robust, and at that more comfortable. And at that point, the other designs tends to disappear, and that becomes the one that is the new standard. But no one defined it, right? It's like a virus that takes over because it fits better. It's more effective in doing its job, even if its job is not exactly a good one. So we thought that we could learn from the virus itself and learn to respond to the problems using and mimicking the same capabilities of what was causing the problem. So in the article you quoted, there's a set of features that we thought resonate both with the design approach and what was happening with the pandemics. And we tried to figure out what could have been a good approach to take, and also what we shouldn't do. So trying to, let's say, force things to look the same immediately, it's wrong. You have to leave freedom to explore different variety of the design, and then pick up the one that fits better and use those as standards. But it's never a top-down process. It's really a bottom-up one, and it's in nature, actually, it works like that. So it was very inspiring for us to realize that. Also because probably it could have been a lead for other problems as well, not just the pandemic. So whenever there's something distributed that impacts us on a global scale, that needs flexible solutions because the context is so different, that needs the contribution of people to be solved or at least tackled, well, those seems to be good things to start to work on,
Yeah, and I wanted to dig a little bit more into sort of the individual interventions themselves from Open Dot, from Fab Care. What were some of the highlights that you noticed throughout the pandemic that were being cultivated through these networks and through the lab itself?
So, well, Italy was one of the first country to actually have to face the peak of the crisis. And that's also where there were some of the first experimentation of 3D printing products for hospitals. So we've seen things firsthand. What I can say that we've learned from that is that at the beginning you really have to just do things. So don't worry too much. Explore, experiment. If it fails, you can fix it. Of course, without compromising or put some people at risk. But very often we tend to overthink or to over-design projects, while it's good to have to apply the spiral development, as we learn in Fab Academy, to make a first prototype, test it on the field, figure out what works and what doesn't, and then fix it and improve it. The second thing that I've learned is that a lot of what we do is really community management. So it's really not enough to have a great solution. It's fundamental that you take the goodwill of people and you put it at good use. So everybody wanted to contribute somehow. It was so frustrating to be closed in your own house and incapable of doing anything. So the best thing you could do was to don't go out. And that's kind of a limited contribution to the situation. So as soon as the first Fab Lab asked for help, and that was in Brescia, like 500 people responded in the first day, so weekend. So it was really the will of people to do something good and to be part of a community. Then, of course, there's also the other side of the same thing. So if people contribute a lot to something that is not impactful, they will not contribute anymore. So it's going to be very hard to engage them again. So the capability of the coordinators, I think, strongly relies on understanding the dynamics of communities and try to put at good use what the community can do. At the beginning, we didn't set up any coordination system because it seemed that it wasn't clear how long it was going to last, or if the problem was like something that would have happened for 2 weeks and then we would have solved it somehow. But when we realized that the problem was consistent and durable, then we select some of the products that seem to be reliable. We kept though that selection updated with the new release that there were of those solutions. And we started to collect requests from hospital and create a link between who was requesting something and who was willing to produce it. So yeah, basically very similar to what happened in other countries, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely think, and especially kind of falling back on somewhat on the idea of like circular economy, and I'm reminded of, and we're having this discussion, I'm reminded of Neil Gershenfeld's book, Designing Reality, in which, you know, the contention is about like the social systems are not advancing at the rate of technology's advancement. And so these moments, especially when you're talking about Italy being in the peak of the pandemic, and then, you know, maybe it's something that lasts a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe it's something that changes our lives forever. But like, what can we do to like build out those systems? And I think it's like it's really good that you have an integrated approach, like the holistic approach that includes the education, because you're building out the community before we get into this scenario of like the 48-hour, like how do we respond and everything. So what is it like to foster like educational programming so that people understand, like, when things happen like this is the value, this is how you can help contribute?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point to discuss. So a while ago, what, at least for me, I remember when I was in school, for instance, what the teacher told me was the truth. And it was like something defined over years of experience. And historians discussed this for centuries, and this is what we consider to be reality. Or scientists repeat the same experiment over and over and over, and this is the most consistent result. I was always kind of curious why, at least in Italy, rarely you study history after the 50s, because it was too recent. Now, too many opinions were still like not agreeing on that. And I know that US has some issues that are very sensitive as well. So people don't really want to take a position and saying that this is the official position, right? So this becomes exponentially more complex when you're dealing with something that is new. So something that I hope people understood from the pandemic, even if honestly I have some doubts, is how science works. So we scientists are not like priests of an omniscient God that tells them what is reality, right? They try to figure it out, and they try to pick up the best path to follow that minimize the risk and optimize the outcome. And then they adjust while they go on, right? Then things change, and then they have to adjust what they said before, but it's not because what they said before wasn't right, but because things changed. So teaching something or teaching to people these kind of skills really means to work not on knowledge, or not only on knowledge, but on soft skills. It's mainly dealing with complexity and uncertainty. If I had to make things simple. So when I'm teaching in universities digital fabrication, I don't teach just how to set up a 3D printer. That's something you learn with a tutorial in 30 minutes, more or less. What I'm trying to teach to the students is how do you design something in an area where you have no previous knowledge? So how do you deal with the uncertainty of exploring that area? Okay, so you're trying to make a couple of students designed a beautiful Arduino-based thing to grow mushrooms in coffee powder, in used coffee powder. And they had no knowledge of Arduino, digital fabrication, nor growing mushrooms. So they had to set up a set of experiments to understand what was the best outcome, what was the best combination, what the problem could have been, and so on. And you start with a bit of research, and then after the first prototype, you have to go back to the research and maybe change your mind. So I don't have a very well-defined method to teach this. I think it's really to support students or users through the process of approaching the contemporary kind of knowledge that we need to learn, that is different from the way you learn stuff in school. So I think that that's the most critical part because you have to work on the mindset.
Yeah, and that's bringing the end users to the through the educational programming to like all of the knowledge and everything. Going back to Fab Care and like not just the makers of Fabbers network that's associated with that, but how are we building bridges between, let's say, for instance, not just manufacturers, but like governments and other sort of like institutions that to help scale the impact. So I wanted to like kind of like turn to sort of like your experience of like cultivating, building together this Fab Care initiative, just so we can kind of get an idea about how the impact scaled.
Yeah. Well, let's say with when you deal person with a person, so even if it's a maker and a doctor, the misunderstanding might be mainly the language. So what we try to explain both to the makers and the doctors or the users is how to speak with each other. It seems silly, but actually it's not an easy skill. So one of the material that we shared on the FabCare platform is how to run interviews when you're speaking about sensitive topic such as health and care. We are not willing to share what's very personal about our health, what's easy for us, what's difficult, what's embarrassing. But that level is kind of easy to deal with. Dealing with certification, national level, policies, or even just the intermediate level, that is organization, hospitals, foundations, and so on. That's complex because not all the people are happy about changing the status quo. It's not a criticism, I mean, usually a lot of people don't want to change the status quo because it kind of works. So we have certification systems to protect the people, not to make their life miserable or complex. Sometimes it happens because the certification system is too difficult, but in average, it's meant to protect the people and give them something that is safe to use. So again, you have to work in spiral. So you find someone that is an innovator, you set up a pilot, you prove that what you have in mind works, or you realize it doesn't. That could happen as well. You figure out why what you're doing is better than what's done traditionally. And then you try to figure out what are the things that needed to be tested to guarantee the same level of safety that you would have with a traditional production. But again, you need to work in loops, in spiral, starting from a small pilot, then including someone that works on certification, then including someone that works on policies. And the problem is that these layers are very complex, very often at the European level. So it's not like, let's find someone that is an innovator and let's have the same motivational drivers, right? Very often the job of these people is to make things homogeneous, not to allow different paths to reach the same goal. So it is complex indeed. What we noticed is that there are ways to go around it. And it's important to start from the ways to go around the problem, because it's a way to make people aware that there are other solutions compared to the traditional one. So in pandemics, during the pandemic, there was this law or local rule, I don't remember exactly if it was a law or another policy structure, that allowed people to create things in different ways just because of the emergency. But that led, at least in Italy, to a very interesting policy proposal about 3D printed medical devices. Without that, there would have been no policy proposal. So that's one example. Another example, during the Fab Fest in Bali, we will be there together with medical makers, running a workshop on medical training tools. So it's a way to bring in a hospital something that is 3D printed easily with cheap machines and so on. It doesn't need to be certified because it's not a medical device. So you start to like spread the seeds, not on your own field, but on your partner field, the people you're co-designing with. And that leads to publication articles, measurement of impact, research, thesis, and finally to policies and change on a larger scale.
It's a really nice. I'm just kind of sitting on that process that you just laid out there. I'm also kind of balancing that with the next piece, which is and it goes up to like where you were talking about that we're going to be at Fab Fest in Bali with viral design. You were talking about like things. The evolution of the interventions happened along the same lines as the pandemic itself, and so there's like the larger cities and everything. But then when we go from that local context of like a large city to a place like Bali, to places that perhaps like the technology has not reached, but there's still some knowledge sharing, there's still some learning that could be done based upon the local materials that are there. I'm just wondering like how that feedback loop is when we're starting to include places that are outside of the larger cities?
So a friend of mine did her graduation thesis on the decolonization of design. And I found it amazing. So very often we think because we are more advanced, then we can help the others. This is wrong in so many levels. So what I'm saying is not we means Western countries, Europe, US, Japan, China, technologically advanced country. We will figure out what the solution is, and then we can export it to, even like with the best of intention, I mean, sharing it openly for free to people that has no capability of developing their own solutions. This is just wrong. Very often I realized that the right mindset to solve a problem comes from countries that approach the problem from a different perspective. And I give you two very simple personal examples, if I may. One, lately I'm personally very interested in sustainability, and I'm trying to be as sustainable as possible in my own house. You know, we start small. It's to gain a knowledge and figure out what you can do in a city like Milan, where you don't have much space, to be honest. And the last project I was working on was a solar oven. Of course, the solar oven I'm designing needs to be pretty big because Milan is not very warm, and needs to be foldable because I don't have space to keep it in the garden somewhere. It needs to track the sun and so on. So when I start to search for the project, what I noticed is that the most interesting projects were not coming from Boston or Milan, of course. They were coming from countries where cooking with traditional method wasn't a great idea. So first of all, I think that we can learn from each other no matter where you come from. Actually, the diversity is the power of the network. And we will also do a workshop, a challenge actually, together with the local champions in healthcare in Bali. And I'm very curious to see how they approach things, because I have no idea. So it could be interesting to see what's important for them, what's a priority, what's not. Change also, let's say, the brief of the healthcare design solution because of that, different context. So I do believe that it's very important to, first of all, don't think about this process of spreading knowledge as a unidirectional. It's really multidirectional, and everybody should focus on their own need, and the solutions that they can find could be useful for the others if the others learn the skill to look at the world as inspiration to find their own solution. So we go back to the mindset. I think that that's the key point. So I don't have yet a precise answer on what should be the model to cooperate effectively in a distributed way all over the world, no matter the culture. But for sure, I know that we should start from that, multidirectional, and look at each other as inspirational cases.
Yeah, and when you say culture, and that we can use that in many different ways. What I find interesting is that you were opening the first Fab Lab in 2011 And we were talking earlier about teaching students how to use 3D printers, or how to give them the problem of like growing the mushrooms and the coffee grinds and everything. And I'm wondering how much of like the design tradition, the local design tradition, like around Milan, around Italy, like how much of that actually, like there's a continuity between the traditional making into like what we're teaching right now, and then how can we like learn from like demonstrating that continuity, and apply that towards like another scenario, such as like going to the communities in Bali, and then kind of helping to demonstrate that continuity of traditional making into digital fabrication.
Yeah. So just because you spoke about design in Italy, that it's of course, in particular in Milan, a very important topic. I really like the fact that the best Italian design and the best Italian designers were not designers, were architects. So before the design became a discipline that you studied that was focused on production, it was basically architects that couldn't work as architects, or were not so interested in working only as architects, and they were using the skills, the creativity, the technical mindset, the philosophical mindset, the culture that they had to create great products. Now, I think that with making is the same thing. So when a designer focuses on making something, it naturally brings in all the knowledge that he developed as designer. So something I'm very happy about and very proud, to be honest, is that whatever we do in Open Dot, we try to make it beautiful. It seems silly, but beauty is the thing that everybody reacts to. So it's not just because it needs to work that it could be unpleasant somehow. And when we co-designed with the local foundation solution for kids with neurological problems, it's a wide category, the foundation was saying they need to be beautiful, because otherwise they will just underline the stigma of disability or diversity in a negative way. And I think that that's fundamental. Honestly, I have to say this, designing a beautiful thing is not my strongest skill. I'm more interested in innovation and technology and functionality and complex systems. But there's people in the lab that really care for every single detail. So last project we do, I can quote on this, we developed a catalog of strategies to repair furniture. And this catalog, the strategies are organized to go from the most effective one that has, let's say, a higher circular impact to the lower one. And every product has a cultural reference in art or design or other experiments done around the world. It refers to art movement, or it tries to mimicking a specific aesthetic of the object. So this makes things desirable, and it's a leverage for change, because again, beauty is the thing that triggers everybody's interest. So I think that we shouldn't ignore that layer. We shouldn't ignore what people from outside the maker movement can bring inside the maker movement.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I want to be careful, because I'm definitely going towards this question, but I don't want to like reinforce like gender norms or anything like that. Like, oh, if you're in innovation technology, like it's more like more for men, or like if you're as beauty aesthetics, it's more for women. But like there's definitely a balance that needs to be struck there, is what I'm hearing. um and I also kind of wonder, like, not interrelated, but maybe like parallel in that way, like how do we like also like balance the participation of men, of women, of everybody, to be inclusive in the lab. How do we kind of like have that invitation for people, and what is the impact of having that level of inclusion?
Yeah, it is a big topic for sure. There is a beautiful book called The Delusion of Gender. I don't know if you read it, in which it's also described how strongly the environment impact on our feeling of being part of the environment where we are. And that sometimes reinforce bias even without our willing to do that. So just to clarify, I've seen a lot of Fab Labs, and sometimes they are very nerdy, very chaotic, very messy, everything around, or not particularly colorful, not curated, and this could be not attractive to some of the people. And I'm not talking about gender here. I'm saying that might not be attractive to a person that really pay attention to the aesthetics, for instance, or to the beauty of the place, no matter the gender, no matter the background. But that means that it reinforces the same kind of people, so we are not creating a diverse group. We are replicating the people that resonate a lot with us. So this is something that we shouldn't do, in my opinion. About the gender, I understand what you mean. It's still something that we see. I mean, when we work in healthcare, there is a majority of women and girls. When we work maybe in other topic like production or technology, there's majority of men. But I think that that's something that comes from the past. So 30, 40 years ago, people were studying different subjects, and now they are doing their job based on what they studied. With my students, I often talk about this. And there are like students sometimes, girls saying, no, but these mechanical things is not something I'm interested in. And then by the end of the course, it happened. I remember a group of only girls that were saying exactly this. And by the end of the course, they were in the lab discussing how to solder properly the transistors on the circuit. And it was amazing to see them, being more confident in what they were doing. And they didn't feel like that wasn't a place for them. So it's something we definitely have to work on, and we have to try to create the most diverse group possible, with one exception. So we experienced even recently, there's just one thing that is fundamental for all the members of the team, and it's a common set of values. So you might be interested in technology, you might be interested in aesthetic, you might have a defined gender, you might not. You might be from one country or another, shy or very friendly. It doesn't matter. What it matters is that you are okay with an environment that challenge the status quo, that it needs to be a bit chaotic, a bit contaminated, very horizontal as much as possible. If you don't fit in that, maybe you will not be able to contribute properly. But beside this common, let's say, baseline, the more diverse, the better.
Yes, and in our last few minutes, like after going through all of this experience, and I feel like we've already kind of like talked about some of things that are like upcoming, but definitely like what, after all of the things that you've learned, what are some of the new opportunities that you see coming out of this work, and then what's next for you, for Fab Care, and so forth.
So, well, a lot of things, to be honest. I'd be very interested to bring Fab Care around the world in the Fab Labs. We are trying to develop, training programs that could be done online to support whoever wants to do that. Also to get in contact with the local hospitals and doctors and work locally as much as possible. To us, it's also a way to collect knowledge and understand what's actually needed the most, and how can we contribute without being not respectful of the local diversities. So that's something I'd like to understand better. So we will definitely focus on that. So I see a lot of opportunities that are also challenges, of course, and try to figure out how technology can help us to sort of automatically check the diversities and guarantee the quality, and how our human side, our soft skills can help us to get in contact and cooperate effectively. So keep these two layers, the human one and the technological one, working together. On the other hand, what we are working on a lot is the circular economy. It's really a fundamental transitions that we have to go through in Open Dot. And even on a personal level and with my students, I'm really curious to explore more this. Milan went through one of the worst droughts in the last century. So I made a system to collect water, and I'm thinking how to filter it and reuse the one from the shower, or to use for the irrigation of the plants. So small actions, small daily activities that helps us to somehow contribute even on these very big issues, so large and global and complex, that just make you want to give up and say, okay, I don't know what to do, so I don't do anything.
Yeah, that the drought aspect, I think I'm almost, we'll have to take that back into sort of like how we talk about like the emergency crisis scenarios that we have within the Atlas a Week signals deck, because I'm wondering if we need to like have maybe a category for like something that's like related to climate emergency, instead of like just natural disaster. Like how are we cultivating the resiliency of the local communities through sort of like responses to drought and everything, because this is an ongoing process. Yeah, so very, very, very important. And I just wanted to thank you so much. We're getting close to the end of the hour, and when you have a good conversation, sometimes it's just It just goes like this. So I'm really thankful for your time and all of your contributions. So thank you.
Thank you for organizing this.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I will see you in Bali.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me grab the screen share here for a second. So for all of our people that are listening, all of our people that are joining us on YouTube, we do have a Miro board that everybody can go to interact with our speaker. So some of those papers that you mentioned, Enrico, if you can give us, if we can work together to find the links for those papers. I think that would be good to like add to the board and some of the notes for, as we're going through the series. Everybody that has the access to this, it's a public, it's an open board, so everybody can come in, do their own form of storytelling after what we modeled today and throughout the series. So going through the different sections of story of self, story of us, story of land, story of now. What was your lived experience? How did you cultivate a community? What was unexpected? And then what are the new opportunities that you have? And then tell us how we're doing. How did you experience the activity? What's the future of makers, and what do we need to do next? And ultimately, we're going to work towards collaboratively building out a map of resilient maker stories. So we're not just having the handful of chats that we had throughout this series, but we want to make sure that everybody's story is included as well. And this is a series, and so the next person up on the hot seat next week, it's going to actually be noon Barcelona time, so I have to set my clock for 4 hours back. But we have Andrew Lamb from Field Ready, so we're going to be very excited to have him for next week. So I'm going to stop the screen share there, and yes, one more word of thanks before I end the live.